Our fourth Hall of Fame inductee is Mr. Andre L. Levacy, introduced by his brother, Mr. Jerome Levacy.
Yes, still morning. Good morning. I'd like to commence my remarks with some heartfelt congratulations to all the incredible individuals who are honored here today. And I am especially honored to introduce my baby brother, Andre Levacy. While Andre's honor is a lifetime selection into the Franklin County High School Athletic Hall of Fame, his comprehensive contributions really served as the catalyst for this recognition. You see, Andre is a man of exquisite nobility, gentility, and grace. And he is exactly what the Hall of Fame is all about. A hallowed institution to properly honor individuals who never had any interest in ceremony, recognition, or self-promotion. Now, over the next few minutes, we're going to attempt to sum up Andre's athletic story in simple terms. During Andre's formative years, it was very obvious to me and others that it was his attitude that would always determine his altitude. And while I truly believe it's impossible to overstate the positive impact athletics has had on his life, Andre is the youngest of 9 children, born to our parents, Shirton and Irene Levacy. The love and values instilled in all of us provided security, confidence, and comfort for the challenges of life. Growing up in Rocky Mount, in an area affectionately called Tank Hill, athletics taught Andre some enduring life lessons, such as he must follow a basic set of rules. You don't always lose, and you don't always win. You make personal sacrifices for the betterment of the group, and you must be reachable, coachable, and disciplined. Now, along these lines of life lessons, as one of his 2 older brothers, my job was to model good behavior, look out for his well-being, answer all the tough questions in life about friends, learning how to drive, and avoiding life's pitfalls. I'll tell you a brief story. Sometime during our early 20s, I was reminded how many of these lessons Andre had already mastered. He said, as a way of earning extra money, Andre and I would umpire and referee youth games. And we were a team. We were often assigned games together, and we received mostly positive feedback. But in this one particular summer, we started receiving big game assignments, the local rivalries that drew the biggest crowds. And Andre and I told ourselves, man, we have arrived. We are the A-team. At least I thought I had arrived. Because you see, for the first time when Andre and I were split up, I was assigned to do some games at Benjamin Franklin Middle School. And I was working home plate. This game drew particular interest of one Mr. Alvin Hall. Now, Coach Hall was an extremely influential man. You've heard the stories. He's in this Hall of Fame. And he was a mentor to me. He even came to my house when I was 10 years old and begged my parents to let me play sandlot football. And he coached me in sandlot football. This particular game, Coach Hall positioned himself right behind home plate. And right from the beginning, he rode me like a rented mule. And he chirped the whole game. So after about the 4th inning, I turned around and I said, Coach, I've had enough. I've heard enough. I'm running this game. And if you don't follow my rules, I will run you. Well, the details of what happened next, I don't quite remember. But after the game, Coach Hall came up to me, put his arm around me, and he said, I thought you could handle a little good-natured ribbon and you were ready for the big games. It's obvious you're not Andre. is what he told me. You see, Andre has forgotten more about sports than you'll ever know. It's what Coach Hall told me. So I guess today proves that Andre knows a lot more about sports. You know, that life lesson I just told you about being reachable, coachable, and disciplined never rang more true. You know, Coach Hall apologized later, but I don't remember working another game without Andre, so I think there was a lot of truth to that. You know, at the beginning of my introduction, I told you that I'll just take a few minutes, so I'll bring it to a close so you can hear from the man who deserves this podium. Andre is a special human being. He is special to me. He is the type of brother that you can say, you know, has outgrown his older brother. He is devoted to the love of his life, Susan Badger. He is a caring father to 3 children. The youngest, Kobe, who is in the room tonight. The love and support of our family is never more evident because 4 of his siblings and their spouses are in the room today, traveling from many, many miles for this special occasion. See, Andre came to understand early on the unique power that sports have to bring people together. And it really is a source of pride and conversations in communities everywhere. And I didn't inundate you with a lot of his accomplishments, and I apologize for that. But you see, I believe that the Hall of Fame is a comprehensive recognition, and while you know of his athletic accomplishments, I wanted to share with you who he is as a person. See, whenever Andre took the field or the court, either as a player or official, he represents the game the correct way. His passion for excellent performance is still very evident, and it leaves little room for mediocrity. And that includes himself, all of his teammates, and even now his officiating partners. Today, Andre and I constantly talk about the positive influences that continue to impact our lives, starting with our parents, our siblings, our children, and yes, the Alvin Halls. These individuals who have molded and hardened the inner core fabric of our resiliency. A few years ago, Andre turned 50. And I asked him, I said, you know, bro, when do you plan to slow down and cut back on all this officiating? And what are the games giving you that you haven't already received? My brother said, you know, it gives me knowledge. Because as our parents and siblings taught us that we should always walk through life as if we have something new to learn. And you will, because everyone you meet for the first time knows something that you don't. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce my baby brother, Andre Levacy, as an inductee into the Franklin County High School Hall of Fame.
Good morning, everybody. Well, we're already off to a good start. It's few and far between that a referee and umpire gets a standing ovation from a group of individuals that's here to recognize a special day, not only for me, but for individuals that have already been enshrined in the Hall of Fame, as well as the class that I'm going in of 2019. Before I get started with recognition as far as teachers and coaches that have certainly had a positive impact on me, I want to recognize family individuals that are here, as well as a few honored guests. Certainly my brother Jerome, that's not only my second oldest brother, but is a confidant. He's a role model. He's a terrific brother, a great uncle. My lovely girlfriend, Susan Badger, who's an administrator here in the Franklin County school systems. My sisters that are on about the 5th row I have 6 sisters, 4 of them were able to attend. Barbara McKnight and her husband John from Durham, North Carolina. My sister Celeste Crowder and her husband Sam Crowder from Glen Burnie, Maryland. My sister Yvonne McEnhammer and her husband Andrew McEnhammer from Chesterfield, Virginia. My oldest sister Cynthia, who actually started our education regime in the house as far as being the oldest and the role model, and her husband John from Manassas, Virginia. My ex-wife Lisa Levacy and our son Kobe Levacy. Kobe's hard to believe a sophomore here at Franklin County High School. It just seemed like 2 weeks ago that we was dropping him off at Country Kids daycare out at State Street, but he's certainly growing into a fine young man that Lisa and I are very proud of. Jerome's youngest daughter and my niece, Jalen Levacy. And then I also have my boss, who probably did not believe that I had to request taken off today to get into the Hall of Fame. So she has showed up and she's filming this. She's on the back row. One of my best friends, we've worked together for 10 years and 7 months, Ms. Chantel Dupree. And a very special individual, Mr. Wayne Clemens, who was the first individual that I ever refereed anything with. I ran into him last week at Walmart, and I'm like, Mr. Clemens, you've got to come to my Hall of Fame induction ceremony. He said, well, when is it? So I told him the date, and he said, well, I hope I can remember. And I'm like, you got to remember. If you're not doing anything, you got to come. So it's very special to see those individuals take the time to come here and to honor me for accomplishments that I have been able to fulfill. Without that foundation that my brother Jerome had talked about in regards to family and some of those things that was instilled in me early on, I certainly would not have the accolades that I have been able to accomplish as an athlete, as a referee umpire, and most importantly, as a man and a dad to my children. So my Hall of Fame induction speech is going to encompass a few things. I hope not to bore you, but it's some things and individuals that I certainly want to give recognition to. Certainly my parents, Shirley Levacy Sr., World War II veteran, just a proud dad. It's 3 things that my dad loved. He loved his family, he loved baseball, and he loved the Cincinnati Reds big red machine. And he was just a baseball savant. He loved the game of baseball. He taught the game of baseball to us. Just little integral things. I can remember him teaching me and Jerome that it was 108 stitches on a baseball. You know, why that was important for him to teach us that, I don't know, but he did, and we sat down and we counted it, and it was 108 stitches on a baseball. You know, it was just one of those things that was important for him to teach us. Dad played on a local baseball team here that some of you who have been around Franklin County may be aware of, is the Rocky Mount Clippers. And growing up, I played multiple sports for Coach Alvin Hall, who had the opportunity to see my dad play as a baseball pitcher. And according to Coach Hall, there was nobody like my dad within the realm of that time of baseball as far as how competitive that he was. So that was instilled in us early on. My mother, Virginia Noel Levacy, Mom was just a no-nonsense type of parent. There was never any in-between with my mom. You either did it the right way or you did it the way that she told you to do it, which was the right way. It was never anything that was going to circumvent doing what she had asked us to do and what was expected of us to do. And to the credit of both of them, they never used sports toward any type of negotiation as far as, if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to play this, or if those expectations are not going to miss, you're not going to be able to go to your baseball, football, or basketball practice. And they didn't have to do that for me, because growing up on Tank Hill, sports for me was everything. It was from the time that we got off to the school bus, to going to practice, to getting back home and doing it the next day. The age difference between Jerome and I is 4 years and 8 months. And growing up on Tank Hill, within that span of he and I, it was 21 boys in the neighborhood. And that doesn't count our oldest brother, who is a few years older than Jerome. It was another set of those boys in the neighborhood. But growing up, we played sports all the time. Whatever the season was, that's what we played. And as Jerome said, Coach Hall had come to the house and had talked to Mom as far as allowing him at the time to play sports. And Coach Hall's a smart man. He knew it was talent up there on the hill. And one thing I can say about Coach Hall, if someone would have given him $1 for every time that he came and picked me up for a practice for football, basketball, and baseball, he could have retired from Lane Company probably 20 years before he retired. He drove a VW Volkswagen, and we would pile in that thing. And as I said, I was with him from the time that I was 9 years old until the time that we won the state championship here in Connie Mack baseball in 1983 for 3 sports. So he has always been a supporter for me. I need to set the record straight, though. Every time I'd make a great play in any sport that I was playing for him, he would always yell out, "That's my son, that's my son, that's my boy." So I get home one day, and this is a true story, and my mom is kind of, and you got to know my mom, and she wasn't upset, she was just disgruntled. And Mom's like, "You know, your coach is always saying that you're his son, you're his son." And I said, "Well, Mom, it's just Coach Hall." And she's like, "Well, I don't want people to think that I'm sleeping with this man." I'm like, "Mom, nobody's going to think that." And she's like, "Well, yeah, every time you make a great play, he's saying that you're his son." I'm like, "Mom, that's just Coach Hall." So to set the record straight, Coach Hall is not my biological dad. But to this day, he's a terrific supporter of me. I see him in the stands at a number of games that I'm doing, whether it's a basketball game at the Civic Center or one in Roanoke or Commonwealth games. It's just, he to me is Franklin County athletics. So fast forwarding to not only Coach Hall, but I also had another recreation coach, a guy named Mark Hudson. And many of you that are Franklin Countyans, you know Mark. Mark is still actively involved here in the community. And I thought Mark was the meanest man that I had ever met in my life. And Mark's nickname is Cookie. And I said to myself, there's nothing cookie about this man. He doesn't have a sweet bone in his body. He's just a yeller and a screamer. But the one thing that my coaches instilled in me early on was accountability, responsibility, and being prepared to compete. So when I reached levels as far as playing sports here at the high school, and certainly being fortunate enough to play college basketball in college and achieve some success, they had prepared me for things that you're not going to come out here and give a half effort. You're not going to come and not be prepared and try your best. So those two I owe a lot of thanks to in regards to just seeing something in me that at times I didn't see in myself, because they pushed me to a level as far as trying my best. And we won a whole lot of games, and yeah, we lost a few, but we always came away from the knowledge that we were going to be prepared and we were going to be ready. And if we lost, we were just going to work harder and go into the next contest and do it all over again. Playing 3 sports here at the high school, my favorite sport ended up being basketball. I played for a coach here by the name of Jimmy Thompson. Coach Thompson was a very demanding coach. He was fair, but he was very demanding. And those of you who remember Coach Thompson, it didn't matter if the Pope and the Vatican was sitting behind the bench, he was going to say what he had to say. And that's just the way that it was. I loved him for that. And he was a great X's and O's coach. He loved his players. He expected the most out of his players because he was given the most as his coach. So again, playing for him my junior and senior year prepared me going to college as far as being able to play basketball. And my first stop was at Averett College, which is now Averett University. And the very first thing that I had noticed when I went to Averett was the college itself at that time, which was 1985, 1986. They were not ready to compete on the basketball level as what I was used to. See, growing up here in Franklin County, we had Ferrum College, which at the time was a junior college, and they just had some unbelievable athletes, some of which played here, and some of those guys will probably be up here one day giving their Hall of Fame speech. So to me, Ferrum basketball was the equivalent of what some people look at Duke and Carolina and Kentucky basketball today. And that's what I was used to. So I went to Averett, spent a year at Averett, terrific teammates, terrific coach, but it just didn't feel as though that if I stayed there 4 years, that I was going to have the opportunity to get out of it what I wanted to get out of it. So I ended up making a trip to Ferrum and had talked to Coach Pullen, Bill Pullen, who at the time was the basketball coach. And he wasn't so much keen on the idea. They had seen me play in high school, and he was like, well, you know, if you come, you can try it for the team, which was fine. An opportunity for me has always been an opportunity. I never want anything to be given to me. If it's given to you, it's not worth having, and you're not going to appreciate it versus having to go out and work for it. That's the way I look at it as an athlete. So I tried for the team. Of course, I make it. So I'm competing with these guys, some of them that I'd played against a year before when I was at Averett. And by the 7th game of the season that year, my sophomore year, I was in the starting lineup. We had just a terrific year that year. But we were making the transition of going from a junior college to an NCAA Division III college. So we had very few home games. I remember our schedule that year. We had 27 games, and 22 of them were on the road. So we were always playing, packing a bag, packing our books, going on the road, play, come back, practice, that type of routine. While at Ferrum, and I already had a relationship with Coach Abe Naff through playing here, and of course Coach Naff being part of the baseball program here on those great Franklin County teams back in the 70s. Coach Naff had introduced me to umpiring and officiating at a higher level. And I remember a situation to where he had brought me in. They were having fall baseball, and he brought me in as an umpire. He's like, come umpire my fall games. You can make a little bit of money. You can get some experience. It'll be good for you. So I'm like, sure. So I go out there, and it's a fall game. And they're playing at the time Liberty Baptist College, which is Liberty University now. And Liberty Baptist, their coach at the time was Bobby Richardson, who is the Bobby Richardson that played on those great New York Yankees teams back in the early 60s. World Series MVP, 3-time World Series champ. Played with Mickey Mantle, Elston Howard, Yogi Berra, those type players. So I'm back behind the plate calling balls and strikes. So in between innings, Coach Richardson is coming from his dugout to the third base dugout. He walks past me and he speaks. He turns around and he comes back and he said, "Coach Neff said that you're a student here." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, I'm Coach Bobby Richardson. I'm the coach at Liberty." And I'm like, "Coach, I wanted to say I know who you are, but that would be above my raising." So he said, "You're really doing a good job back here." He said, "You ought to stick with it." And I look back on that even to today to where, what if Coach Richardson didn't take that time to have a 15, 20-second conversation? What if he just walked on down to the third base dugout and didn't say anything? But he took the time to give me some words of encouragement, and that's something that I instill in myself today in regards to just trying to give positive feedback to officials now, officials and umpires that I mentor. So we get through the fall baseball season. We now transition to basketball, and Coach Neff is teaching me another lesson in officiating. I happen to be at a Ferrum women's game. Coach Neff is there not only as a fan, but as a supporter there as far as an administrator. And the referee of this women's game, if you've ever seen the Harlem Globetrotters and the referee that they have that's part of the skit, it's a guy that looks like that he has a wig that has a bald spot in the middle of the wig with the shirt out of his pants, and his pants are high waters and they're wrinkled. And he's just running up and down the court doing all the silly things, just being part of the act. So Coach Neff had gotten my attention because the football guys at this basketball game, they were just on him, just mercifully. And Coach Neff got my attention, and I remember this to this day. And he said, "If you look like a clown when you're refereeing and umpiring, they're going to treat you like a clown." And I always remember that. Now, you may go out here in the community today, and some coaches in games that I have refereed in and umpired, they may say I referee and umpire like a clown. But it's not because I am presenting myself like one. So those are just teachable moments that enabled me as far as wanting to pursue officiating. I had success as far as a basketball player at Ferrum. I'm on the 50th anniversary team of the USA South Conference. That just floored me in regards to being recognized for 50 years amongst all the schools that's in the USA South, which previously was the old Dixie Conference. To be selected on that team was just a terrific accomplishment. I'm still among the top 10 that was listed at Ferrum as far as the top 10 all-time players that's up there. One game stands out amongst many was a game that I had set the scoring record for most points in a game. I ended up having 47 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists in a game. My mom is there at the game, and at the time she was coming to the games with a lady that my sisters would know. She was a school teacher here named Miss Lula Saunders. And they would come up to my Ferrum games. And after the end of the game, when I had the 47 points, I go over to my mom and I'm like, "Mom, I did it." And again, my mom just being my mom, she said, "Did what?" I said, I broke the school record for most points in a game. I had 47 points tonight. And Mom knew, they had announced, and she just grinned. And she said, you know, I just sit here and told Lula. She said, the only thing he's got to do is just pitch it in the basket. So all these cybermetrics and things like that these scouts are doing now, if they could just follow, you know, LeBron and Kevin Durant and Kyrie, if they just follow my mom's advice and just pitch it in the basket, that the success ratio would be a whole lot in regards to the outcome as far as what they're looking to. So those are some of the successes that I had as a player. After I finished playing, I knew it was only one of two things that I wanted to do. I wanted to stay involved in sports in some way. And the choice for me, I had some opportunities to get into coaching. I take my hat off to coaches that are up here on the stage, as far as coaches that are here. Coach Gibson was one of our football coaches here when I was here. Coach Hubbard, hope I'm not missing anybody, but the coaching is just so demanding in regards to what the expectations are from the community and the parents. So I knew that was something longevity-wise that I did not want to do. So I chose to stick with something that I had been successful with in high school and college, from guys like Mr. Wayne Clemens teaching me and stories that I've shared about Coach Knapp. I stuck with officiating. And I started officiating as a way as far as just making some additional income. I mean, it's something that not only has been an avocation, but also a vocation. It's something that I've enjoyed doing. I've had some success with. I've had some failures with it. Just recently, I had a fan to yell, "Levacy, you keep making calls like that, they're going to put you in the Hall of Shame and not the Hall of Fame." So you get very humbled as far as the line of work that I'm in. Over the course of my officiating career, I've officiated now for 31 years, football, basketball, and baseball. And officials, whether they will tell you or not, they keep up with the successes as far as the number of state semifinals and finals that they are selected to officiate. And those come out of the Virginia High School League office in Charlottesville, Virginia, as well as in conjunction with your local associations that you work with. A success ratio for someone that has done it for as long as I have, usually if you get a couple of semifinals and finals over a 30-year career, you've had some success with it. To date, I've had a total of 18 in football, basketball, baseball combined in semifinals and finals. I've had 2 NCAA national semifinals, and I've had 1 national championship. And in those games, I look back on some of the successes and some of the failures that have occurred. I look back on refereeing when I probably didn't feel like it, or had a bad day at work, or just had a bad day. You know, it happens. So in the summer of 2014, we're getting ready to have our family reunion in Virginia Beach. This was the 4th week of July. Leading up to that week, I'm not feeling my best, but you know, that happens as far as the lifestyle that I live, just sometimes just living out of a officiating bag and just getting a number 2 combo at a fast food restaurant at 10 o'clock in the morning, just getting something to eat and driving and going home. So, you know, feeling bad is, you know, I hate to say it, but it's kind of normal sometimes as far as the lifestyle that I have chosen to live. So I'm sleepy at work leading up to it. I get through the day. So it's a Friday and I'm trying to get home. My office is in Roanoke at the time, trying to get back here to Rocky Mount. We got to get Kobe. We got to get loaded up. We're leaving for the beach that Saturday morning. All of a sudden, my right leg just goes numb while I'm driving on 220. I'm like, I can't make it home. Now I feel like that I'm going to pass out. So I'm like, if I can just get to this next stop and pull over and take a nap, I'll be okay. That's kind of the way I grew up. You're having bad days, you're feeling bad, you just take some Vicks Vapor Rub and go take a nap, and you go somewhere and sit down. So I'm just trying to get through this moment. So finally I get home. I lay down and take a nap. Lisa calls me and she's like, don't forget, you got to go get Kobe's bicycle if y'all are taking it to the beach. So I'm like, man, okay. So I get up and go 2 miles where Granny and Papa live. I can't pick up his bicycle and get it on the back of the truck. Now I'm shaking as though it's just a real violent shake. So I'm thinking, I'm having a stroke. I have the symptoms of a stroke. So now you have to keep in mind, at the time I was living downtown Rocky Mount on Noel Street. I'm 1 mile from the rescue squad. I'm 2 miles from Carilion Franklin Memorial Hospital. So who do I call to tell that I'm having a stroke? I call my ex-wife, Lisa. Like, Lisa, I think I'm having a stroke. Her response is, she starts laughing. And that's not to be cynical, but that's just the type of the poking in the ribs relationship that we have. So she calls my bluff because she knows that I do not like going to the doctor, and I definitely don't like going to the hospital. So she's like, well, if you're having a stroke, I'm coming right over there right now. We're going to the hospital. So I said, okay. And then the phone is like silence. And she's like, you're serious? I'm like, yes. So she's there within, I don't know, 1 or 2 minutes max. She gets me to the car, and she could see that I was really in trouble. So we get up to the hospital. They immediately take me in. They're running all these tests. And my initial blood pressure was 221 over 110. So they take me back, and they're like, well, you're definitely having a stroke, and we've got to get you to Carilion Roanoke Memorial Hospital. Her response is, okay, I need to go home, get some clothes, because I'm going to ride in the rescue squad. I'm laying back, and they got IVs pumping in. So they're like, no, we got to take him lifeguard 10. So now we're serious. So the helicopter's out there, and I could hear it. Now keep in mind, for the number of years that I lived downtown Rocky Mount, unfortunately this helicopter flew over my house, I don't know, 10, 12 times a week, so I could hear it. So sure enough, they load me up. The flight was like 7 minutes from Rocky Mount to Roanoke, getting me to the emergency room, hooking up all these test IVs and things like that. So I'm laying back there. A few minutes later, Lisa arrives. And I have a way of putting serious situations into a sports perspective. So these neurologists are at the end of my bed, and it's a team of doctors, team of nurses, and they're huddled almost as though that a pitching coach is looking to make a pitching change on whether they're going to go with the left-hander with the big curveball or the right-hander with the slider. So I'm there, let's just make a decision on this thing. I got to get to the beach the next day. I got to get back home. I got to get Kobe's bicycle. I got to get Kobe. So finally they break the huddle at the pitcher's mound, and they come to my bed, and they're like, Mr. Levacy, you've had a stroke. I'm like, yeah, that's been told to me in Rocky Mount. And they're like, well, we also have a problem. You're having bleeding on your brain. And we're contemplating as far as whether we need to do surgery right now or whether we're going to monitor your blood pressure and keep that in checks for the next 12 hours. and they're like, the next 12 hours is very critical. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is Friday. Wednesday, I just did a collegiate wood bat game, 1-0, hour, 10 minutes, and the losing team said that was the best umpiring they had all year. And now we're getting into a situation of where we're going to do brain surgery. I think at the time I was 46 years old. So now I'm laying back on the gurney. All the kids are there. And I'm watching the blood pressure monitor, kind of like a stockbroker watches the numbers on CNN at the bottom of the screen. Those numbers are zooming, my head's zooming. And finally, they got the blood pressure down to where surgery was not needed, but I stayed in intensive care until Monday afternoon. And that was just one of the things that I have had to overcome in regards to taking better care of myself, being accountable and being responsible for my own health. So I got through that. Other than just being a little bit hard-headed, I recovered 100%. And that calendar year, I ended up working what's considered to be the Triple Crown as far as officiating. I had the football state finals that year in Salem. Refereed a kid that game named Warren Thornhill, who now plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just had an unbelievable game. Every time I see him in a Chiefs game, I always think about me recovering from my stroke. And I had a basketball state semifinal that year and then a high school state final. All of that from recovering over a stroke. So the journey in regards to my longevity in sports, it's been very enjoyable. It's been very rewarding. And I've had an opportunity to really look back on this and appreciate it since I ran into Coach Hall at Sheets, and he told me, he said, you're getting in the Hall of Fame. This was the last week of August. I said, are you sure, Coach? He said, yeah, I'm sure. He said, I'm on the board. Good enough for me. And I'm like, what is it that I want to leave in regards to Franklin County athletics, Franklin County community, and Franklin County High School? I have literally been involved in sports every year of my life, all year round since I was 7 years old. Never took a year off. Never been too tired as far as not wanting to just go out and officiate this game. Probably should have, but I didn't. So I've been a lifer in this. But what I want to leave, and I tell my son this all the time, our last name here in our community, Levacy, it resonates. It stands for something. It's what my dad gave me. And I always tell him, you never know who's watching you. And I want him to understand that. I want, specifically speaking to my son, Kobe, I've done all the hard work in sports. You just go out and you have fun and you be a teenager that makes this family proud. Continue doing what you're doing. To my brothers and sisters, everybody else can have the Michael Jordans and the Larry Birds and the Reggie Jacksons and the Willie Stargells. I've got you guys. Y'all are my role models. Y'all have led by examples. You exemplify what being great brothers and sisters and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws who are not here, you exemplify what being role models are. Every time that I've listened to the advice that you have given me, you have never been wrong. When I was hard-headed and tried to do things my own way, that's when I ended up needing to come back and do the things that you have taught me to do that's right or wrong. My brother-in-law, Sam Crowder, who always had a summer job for me, who encouraged me to push a brick full of a wheelbarrow full of brick in the summer heat in Maryland to illustrate that this is the type of work that is good work, but is work you can choose to do, or you can choose an avenue of utilizing your education. To my girlfriend, Susan Badger, I have been in schools in the role that I have for over 10.5 years. I've never met a person that is more passionate toward her students than what she is. I love her for that in regards to when she comes home. It's never a frustrating moment with her of the behaviors that the kids have done. It's more of a frustrating of students not realizing their abilities to achieve their ultimate success. Keep teaching, keep nurturing, keep encouraging, and the kids that you touch every day, they're going to win. In closing, this community and this award, out of all the things that I have mentioned, is one of the biggest accolades that has ever been bestowed upon me up to this point. I cannot express my gratitude enough in regards to being recognized as a Hall of Famer, and to have my children and my children's children to come by the Hall of Fame display case and to see the last name of Levesey resonate as not only a Hall of Fame sports person, but as a Hall of Fame person in this community. As a man, that's all that I can ask for. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank those here in the audience for always being a supporter of Franklin County athletics. And I always end conversations with two phrases. I always tell people, if there's anything that I can do to help you, please let me know. And the second phrase is, keep winning. Thank you.
Our fifth Hall of Fame inductee is Mr. John Abe Naff, introduced by Mr. Alvin Hall.
Well, I guess I'm the oldest guy up here on the board. And some of the guys I played with, some of the guys I've coached. But tonight, I want to let you know my opinion of Abe Naff. I got to coach him in an all-star game when he was 11 years old, and we've been real good friends ever since. Abe played baseball and football here at Franklin County, but his best game was baseball. He was a catcher on the team that played in 7-7, played for the state championship. We didn't win it, but we were very good that year. After he got out of high school, he attended Lynchburg College and played for the late Gerald Thomas there. Twice he was named ODAC Player of the Year as a catcher. He coached baseball at Ferrum from '85 to 2007. He led Ferrum to 10 USA South Atlantic Conference baseball titles, 10 NCAA Division III playoff appearances. He was voted Virginia Small College Coach of the Year 5 times. USA South Atlantic Conference Coach of the Year 4 times. His final game as head coach at Ferrum they was playing for the championship of the conference, and the winner of that game was going to the World Series. Didn't work out. They got beat, but they got beat by a good team that was from Georgia. And that was the finals of the NCAA Division III South Region Baseball Tournament. Abe is a member of the Lynchburg Hall of Fame, Lynchburg College Hall of Fame, the USA South Hall of Fame, the Salem Roanoke Baseball Hall of Fame, and the Ferrum College Hall of Fame. He served as athletic director at the college from 2004 to 2019. He hired all the people that are currently coaching on the staff there. Abe had 25 players who played for him to play professional baseball. The two we hear most from is Billy Wagner and Eric Owens. Abe holds the best winning percentage in the state of Virginia of all division teams. 9th all time in Division III, 26th all time in all divisions. I don't know anybody in Franklin County who has done more for baseball than these guys up here seated. Abe, to me, is the guy that thought first about who the guys playing for him were and what they could do and what they should do. And he got the best out of everybody he ever coached. And it's my honor to introduce Abe, who won 643 games at Ferrum, to introduce him to this board.
Thank you, Howard. Y'all be ready. It's not gonna take long. Thank you, Alvin, and thank the selection committee for including me in this year's class. It's an unbelievable strong class, and I'm going to thank a lot of people. First, I'm going to start with my family, and I get my emotion from the Hunt side. I'll be emotional, so y'all just bear with me. And you know, my father was a longtime educator here in the county. In this photograph, he's back there watching this. And not only was he my father, he was my best friend. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then my mother. I'm like Gary. I got my competitive spirit from my mother. She hated to lose in anything, whether it was a real estate deal or a ball game or whatever. And but I was so fortunate to have great parents, and their influence created what I strive to be, and all the help. And my father, being a lifelong educator here, he was a true educator because he understood the importance of athletics. And he thought athletics was one of the greatest teaching tools that the educational system has if it's done correctly. And I totally believe in that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being competitive and wanting to win. And I would never, ever apologize for wanting to be the best and wanting to win, because that's what our society is all about. It's a competitive world we live in. But my family, two of my heroes are in my family, my older brother Wes and my uncle Charlie Buck. Really appreciate y'all being here. My father was assistant principal, so he had to come, educators have to get here early, and I was 8 or 9, and I would come with Daddy to watch them get ready for the football game. But my grandpa Hunt was always sitting on the 50-yard line waiting for the game to start 2 hours in advance. So he had to babysit me, and so I got to know all the athletes, and Charlie Buck was in the backfield with Coach Floor, Marshall Floor, and I got to know the basketball players, Cornell Cook and Robert Ray, and all of them. I got to see Benny Gibson and Raymond Keys and Harry Smith and all of them play, and then the baseball players. So I got a early induction to it, and I really looked up to those people, and I wanted to be one. But our family, we all started out as Callaway Colts, and we're very proud of that. And then we got to move over to the high school, and whether it's good or bad or whatever, I was influenced by my coaches more so than the academic world, and but I think it was a good thing, and I appreciate the coaches I had here. And Les and I were on the same offensive line, and we helped a lot of coaches decide or second guess their livelihood because our inability to make the team better. But I played in 30 football games here, and we won 6. My senior year here, I played in 6 homecoming games, ours and 5 other ones. Everybody wanted to play Franklin County at homecoming. But it wasn't because of the coaching. I think we had the best coaches that there were. I played for Dick Fouts his last year. Then I played for Miller Bennington. And I thought the world of those people. And Benny was on the staff, and Coach Floor was on the staff, and Jeff Heifel, and Dan Hodges, Mason Liggins, Chris Cahila. And y'all got to understand, and I was in the coaching profession for a long time, coaches do not make players. Players make coaches. I was coach of the year when I had Billy and Eric. It was just simple. I had better players than everybody. I was the coach of the year. But I was so fortunate to have great coaches in high school. And baseball, Franklin County's always had a strong tradition of baseball. And we were led, in '76 we had a great team. Gary was a pitcher. And in high school, if you have 2 good pitchers, you have something. We had Gary Gilmore and Harold Brown. And that's 2 of the, best arms that's ever been in this school. And I was fortunate enough to be able to catch both of them. But teammates are what it's all about. And when we went in '77, we had a group of great teammates and Harold Brown. He was a right-handed pitcher, and he pitched us all the way to the state finals. And if he could have pitched the state finals, we may have won that game, but we played Kempsville that day. And I'm going to tell you a little story how we got to Kempsville, and then I'll get back to the championship game. Well, that year in '77, we did not win the district tournament. Cave Spring beat us in we were regular season champs. Had to play the tournament. Cave Spring beat us. Best thing that ever happened to us, because by doing that, we had to play Halifax in the first game of the regionals. They had to play Garfield. Well, Garfield had a right-handed pitcher with a deadly curveball, and we couldn't hit a curveball to save our rear ends. But so Garfield used their number one against Cave Spring, and we're playing Halifax. Well, Gary and Les will remember this. The year before, we were playing Halifax, and the guy's up to bat named Stanley Davis. Well, Harold's pitching, and Harold's not going to back down from anyone. You know, he only had two pitches, fast and faster. So I started just wiggling my fingers so Harold would just shake his head, so to make the hitter think that he had more than one pitch, but he didn't. So Harold, I called the pitch, fastball, and it's belt tied, and Stanley Davis takes the hardest swing I've ever seen in my coaching career, and he hits it. And if y'all remember where the old baseball field was, the home plate was down in the end zone. Well, it's 405 feet to the concession stand. You know, that was in right field. That was one of the deepest parts of the park, because the football field center field was shorter than right field. So it was 405 to the base of the gym. The ball hit 3/4 of the way up the gym and puts a dent in the side of the building. The dent's still there. It's in the metal. So everybody questioned me and Harold, because we did get influenced by our coaches a lot, and the academic part just was a little bit better. So I go out to the mound. I said, Harold, that ball hit the gym. He said, Abe, I'm glad it did. I thought it was going over. Chuck Martin was our first baseman, and he jumped for it. The ball was still climbing when it hit the gym. So the reason I tell that story is we're in the regional game. We're winning 4-2 against Halifax. Runner on first base. Stanley Davis comes up. So most people think if a guy's on second base, you walk him, you know, because you got a base open. I go out to the mound. Coach Hodges comes out there. I said, we got second base and third base open. You know, should we walk him? Harold said, I ain't walking him. Well, he throws him a high fastball. Coach Hodges has told us, facing Stanley, that we're never going to throw him a strike, because he was going to swing. I mean, he was a great hitter. So we throw him a fastball away, so he hits it over the center field fence. Well, Glennis Young is our center fielder. Glennis Young hadn't played much. Glennis Young can fly. Glennis Young is a great American. He grades lumber for Hatcher Ferguson down there at Ferguson Land and Lumber now. Just a great person. Well, he's our second string center fielder. He's out there because our first string center fielder, Cliff Hammock, we break his arm horse playing, you know, in the last game. So we put Glennis in there. He catches the ball over the center field fence, robs him of a home run. But the ball was hit so high and so far, the guy at first base just knew he was going to score, so he goes around second, headed to third. Glennis makes the catch. Alvin Hall is standing over there leaning up against a pole. He said, throw it to second, throw it to second. He didn't touch second on the way back. So Glennis gets the ball in. We touch second base. He's out. We win by 1. We end up winning 4-3, and that put us in the state semifinal game. So Alvin should have been our MVP of that year because he made that call. But we had a great team, had a lot of great teammates, 2 great coaches, Dan Hodges and Mason Legan. Both of them have passed. Harold Brown was an unbelievable athlete, great pitcher. And David Spencer, both have passed away. But that was a great team. with one really, really good pitcher. But I used to always tell my players, no matter what you do, whether you're all-conference, all-region, all-American, the best compliment you can get is to be called a great teammate. And that's what we had, great teammates. And I was fortunate in my high school career to play with 3 unbelievable athletes, Harold Brown, Gary Gilmore, and Dwayne Pee Wee Board. Now think about this. Pee Wee was inducted last year. Pee Wee has more Super Bowl championship rings than he did high school football wins his senior year. We were 0-7-3, and he's got 4 national championship rings, or maybe 5. 3 as a player. But Pee Wee's just an exceptional athlete. Gary Gilmore, unbelievable. He could run, he could hit with power, and he could pitch. But what he did at Coastal Carolina, in our profession, and in the NCAA, is probably the most unbelievable championship that could ever happen. I mean, Coastal Carolina is not one of your majors. Gary has made it a major baseball school, but it doesn't have the resources that Texas A&M and Texas. And if Gary would win the state championship of South Carolina, it would be an unbelievable feat with Clemson and South Carolina and all those good baseball schools in the state. If he could just be the best in his state every year, it'd be unbelievable. But Coastal Carolina won the national championship with Gary at the helm. Not only did he build that team, he built that program, he built that stadium. The job he has done down there, you have to be in our profession to understand how great of an accomplishment he has done. I mean, it's just simply unbelievable. Harold Brown, Darren Hodges was at Ferrum. Darren was one of our first high draft choices. He went in the 10th round with the Yankees. Mark Newman was Harold's pitching coach at Southern Illinois. Mark Newman was a big executive with the Yankees. Darren is at spring training for his first time in pro ball. And Mark Newman's going through checking people off. He gets to Darren and said, "Darren Hodges, Rocky Mount, Virginia, the home of Harold Brown." Newman said, "Darren, I want to tell you that was the hardest working player I've ever coached, ever been associated with, was Harold Brown." So that, I was fortunate. I was always surrounded by very good players and good teammates. Because of Harold, because I called Harold, I got to go to Tech for a visit, JMU for a visit, Chipola Junior College for a visit, and Lynchburg College, because they all wanted Harold. It was a package deal. I called Harold. They recruited me because of Harold. Ended up going to Lynchburg College. Dan Burnett, a guidance counselor, when I was in the 9th grade, mentioned to me, "You ought to go think about Lynchburg College." That stuck. Jerry Thomas came, saw us play, liked me, showed me a little love, went to Lynchburg College to play. Great place. I love Lynchburg College. Jerry Thomas was a great baseball man, very demanding, high expectations, tough, mean, demanding, and I loved him to death. And I love Lynchburg College. Boy, was that a great place. Worst mistake I ever made was graduating in 4 years. You know, my father was a great influence on me. In my family, you know, I'm blessed with smart people above me and below me. I'm in the middle. Just scholars, you know, very society. I'm the black sheep of my family. Daddy knew that. He said, "Now, son, I want you, when you go down there, I want you to make sure that you don't let your books get in the way of your education." I took him up on that. I love that place and still do. But I had great teammates. One of my teammates, great player, Chip Childers, ended up being a teammate with Gary later on in pro ball. And it's all about the relationships. And I just love my college career. Well, Jerry Thomas, there again, I listened to him. He gave me a lot of confidence. He said, Abe, Ferrum College is starting, they're going to make baseball a full-time position. I'm 21 years old, graduating. He said, you need to apply for it. You could be a great coach. So I'm stupid enough to have enough confidence that I apply for it. Well, I end up coming in second. I interviewed with Coach Norton, Hank Norton. Y'all heard people talk about him today. Well, I came in second to Rick Jones. Y'all might not remember Rick, but Rick was there when we were junior college. I was his assistant. Rick left Ferrum, went to Elon, then went to Georgia Tech. A legend at Tulane. Now he's in the Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame. Just has he had a great career. But Rick and I was his assistant. Well, Rick left to go to Elon, Coach Norton. I'm 24 years old now. So Coach Norton kept telling me, if Rick ever leaves or when he leaves, I want you to be our head coach. So at age 24, Coach Norton gave me the opportunity to be the head coach at Ferrum College. He said, boy, that's what he did. He said, boy, let me tell you, there's two ways to do stuff, the right way and the wrong way. I said, all right, help me out here. He said, the right way to build a program is you go out and find you two good pitchers. And he was left-handed. He said, if you can find them left-handed, that's even better. He said, well, I said, Coach, what's the way of doing it wrong? He said, you go out and find you two good umpires. It didn't take me long to figure out that North Carolina had all the umpires. They had gotten to them first. Well, my father would never say anything bad about anyone. But he'd go down there and see us being umpired by Frank and Jesse James down in North Carolina. And he'd say, son, y'all got to do something about that now. The first year my father retired from this great school system, he saw more innings of Ferrum baseball than I did. Because some of those umpires sent me to where I couldn't see them. And Daddy was right there. But I learned a lot about that, and I learned a lot from Coach Norton, because my first 2 years, I was an assistant football coach to Coach Norton. And it wasn't about coaching football, because obviously he didn't hire me to coach football from my high school years, But he taught me how to coach people. And he said that's what coaching was about. You got to coach people. And everybody thought Hank Norton was the most roughest, toughest guy. He was a teddy bear. He was one of the nicest, big-hearted people you've ever met in your life, but he always had an assistant coach that was a hatchet man. I mean, he had an assistant coach who would take care of all the nonsense. And they called it discipline back then. They would call it abuse now. I mean, there's no way you could coach today. And Coach Floor mentioned it with Coach Fouts. Coach Fouts played for Coach Norton. Dan Hodges played for Coach Norton. Now, I've met a lot of Coach Hodges' teammates. They were the '65 National Championship team. I've been very good friends with those people. And they called him Hubie Hodges. They coached us in 1977. The most amazing comeback story I'd ever seen. I mean, they had taken a number of feet of his intestines out, But he was I don't think he ever played baseball in his life. But he could coach people. He coached us. And like Gary said, we loved him and he loved us. So I start coaching baseball at Ferrum. We're a junior college. My first year there, we were junior college. My next 2 years, we were on probation because we moved from junior college to Division III, so we're not eligible for any postseason play. Probably had two of our better teams in '86 and '87. '87, BMI won the Southern Conference. We beat them 5-3. You know, at Ferrum, we didn't have scholarships. I recruited one person. I had 25 guys sign professional contracts. I had one person who was drafted out of high school. That was Jimmy Hamilton. He went in the 25th round out of high school. He came to Ferrum and went in the 7th round. We had 4 guys drafted in the top 10 rounds, which is unbelievable. And the first one was Darren Hodges, who played right here, went in the 10th round. And my assistant coaches were from Franklin County. My first was Tim Perlman, TP, then Pee Wee. And by the way, Alvin said we won 641. Pee Wee was 22-3 in my career. That's how many times I got thrown out and he came back and won the game. and then Darren Hodges was my assistant, and Barry Shelton, who's the baseball coach here now, was one of my assistants. But we had a lot of great players. Like I said, I was coach of the year when I had Billy and Eric. I got to tell you a Billy Wagner story because everybody knows about Billy. His latest accomplishment is he's being inducted into the NCAA Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, November 2nd. And it's a great honor. Not many Division III people get an honor like that. But Billy Wagner, a little left-hander from Tannersville, Virginia. Has anyone ever been to Tannersville in Tazewell County? It's like Algoma in Franklin County. Tannersville's claim to fame, other than the home of Billy Wagner's, is it was the last one-room schoolhouse in the state of Virginia. It closed in 1960. But that's where Billy's from, and I'll end with this little story about the great game of baseball, and my father was right. It's a great sport, teaches you a lot. Baseball, if you're a baseball player, you got to handle failure. You got to handle tough situations. I mean, think about it. You hit 300, you failed 70% of the time, so you got to deal with it. But it's a real humbling sport. It can humble you. My players used to hit a home run or do really well, and they would put a feather in their hat and strut around. I said, that's fine if you put that feather in your hat, but you better be ready when someone plucks one out of your rear end too. You better be able to handle that. Well, this is a story about getting humbled. We go out, Billy has me out to Tazewell County. It's Billy Wagner Day. They're going to give him to the key to the county. They love little Billy. You know, he's 5'9", throws 100 miles an hour, 7-time National League All-Star. Rolaids, he's on the ballot for Cooperstown. Hopefully one day he will be in the big Hall of Fame. So we go out there. We're early. They're always taught to be early, and we got there 3 or 4 hours early. So Billy, what are we going to do? He said, let's go see a movie. I said, all right. We go down to the theater. Walk into theater. The lights are on, and there's 8 people sitting in the theater. Well, we walk in, and they just stand up. They're high-fiving. They're congratulating us, and, you know, this is awesome. And the lights go off. The movie starts. The guy behind us, because me and Billy is just all, you know, big shoulder, got our head high and everything like that. He said, who are y'all? I said, this is Billy Wagner. We're here for Billy Wagner Day. They're giving him the key to the city. Isn't that why y'all were clapping? He said, no. So we got 8. Y'all made 10. We can start the movie now. I want to thank all of you. I love this county. I love being an Eagle. thank my family, my wife, my son Casey, who is the father of Nolan, my 9-month-old grandson. Gary, he's still backing out on the curveball at 9 months. I need to.
Just hit the fastball.
Yeah, okay. My daughter Jessie, she told me last night, said, you want to write something down? No. You want to practice? No. See, she was right. I should have. Thank y'all.
Our next Hall of Fame inductee is Mr. Noel Price Pinkard, introduced by his brother, Mr. Ben Pinkard.
Well, first off, I want to sue Hewlett-Packard. Let me tell you why. I sat down last night for about an hour and a half making notes on the computer, you know, with Hunt and Peck, and went to print it out. Aerostate. I worked on it for another hour and a half, the printer, trying to get it to print. Have you ever seen my handwriting? I should have been a doctor or a lawyer or something other than what I was, I guess. But anyway, we're here today. I'm here to honor my brother Noel. Noel has been my buddy from day one. We have been together through thick and thin. We have played every season, whatever the sport was during the season, we played it, except I didn't play basketball, but Noel did. But to start off with football, it all started one September day in 1950. A package arrived on South Main Street. It was a box from Sears Roebuck. In that box, when Noel opened it, was a jersey, blue jersey, with gold letters with number 83 on it, a pair of gold-colored pants, a pair of plastic shoulder pads, and a black leather helmet. Now, he was a dude all dressed up. But folks, I tell you, from the time he played Sandlot football, when he stepped on that football field, it was all business. He was always a quiet guy, reserved, well-mannered. But when he stepped on that football field, he was ready to play. And he played a couple years Sandlot football. The first organized Sandlot football team had been in Franklin County. And he played with guys like Bill Davis and Butch Lynch and Abe Patterson and all those guys, you know, that he grew up with, Jimmy Poindexter. But he excelled on the field because Noel has a quality that is rare in a football player. He had no fear when he stepped on that football field. He did not fear of being hurt, any shape, way, or form. He loved the sport from day one. He and I played in that field down in front of the house. I don't know how many hours we played as kids down there. But I got to confess one thing. Brother Noel pressed me into service because he loved football more than I did. But we would go down that field, and practiced forever and ever and ever. And later when he started kicking extra points, there was a maple tree in the yard, huge maple tree, and it had a fork in it. And I would hold the football for Noel, and he would kick the thing, but Noel could kick an extra point like a college kid when he was in the 10th grade. And the remarkable thing is he kicked it barefooted. It didn't break his toes, but it never did. But in 1953, he moved up to JV when he was in the 8th grade. And that year, he was awarded, he was about 115 pounds soaking wet. But that year, he was awarded the best back trophy on the JV football team. And he was probably one of the smallest ones on the whole team. But he had the intestinal fortitude and the drive and the desire to play that sport like not many people have. He's always been a competitor. Whatever he does in sports, being competitive is the number one thing. But Coach Steve Richards said of Noel, talking to me, I think Steve was trying to get me to do a little bit better than I was doing, I think, but he said, your brother has qualities that make him what he was in high school in sports, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, it made no difference. He had a quality of desire. He loved the sport. He stood out. By senior year, he won the. He was first. He was president of the varsity club. Second, he won the trophy for the best back. And thirdly, I'm kind of like the guy now, I couldn't remember what the third thing was in politics, if y'all remember him. What was the third one, Noel? I don't know either. There you go. What have I got you for? But let's see here. Oh, he was voted most athletic by the students. So it was three things his senior year that showed that he was a pretty good football player. And baseball, he started out in a cow pasture on South Main Street playing Little League baseball. Mr. James Poindexter formed a team. I don't know whether Wayne Clemens was on Boone's Mills or not. You were. Wayne was on Boone's Mills, had one at Ferrum, one at Rocky Mount. And we used to play those teams every Saturday. But Noel had one quality about playing baseball. He had a tremendous arm. He could throw the baseball like a shot. And I don't know of any ball player that in Franklin County, there's been a lot of good pitchers that pitch for Franklin County. But when Noel threw that baseball and Johnny Metz caught it, it sounded like a .22 rifle going off. It was a thing of beauty. And I do believe that Tom Sievert copied Noel's windup, because Noel had a windup just like Tom Sievert's. But he excelled in baseball because he loved it also. He could play any position on that team, whether it be catcher. First, the only thing I never saw him play was first base. I don't think he liked the tight glove that he had to wear or something, but he could play any position in the whole field. And, well, let's see here. But I will have to brag on my brother, because he's always been special to me. And when he played 4 years of baseball. But let me back up. He played 5 years of football, 3 years on varsity, 2 on JV. Not many people were picked in the 10th grade to play varsity football in his day. And matter of fact, when I played, I don't know, it was a single kid that was in the 10th, or Kerry Anderson was the only kid that played varsity football before the 11th grade. But he played it in the 10th grade with a lot of good football players. In basketball, he played 5 years, 2 of which he played on the varsity team. And he probably played with Alvin Hall. I don't know, 1 year, I think. Alvin was 1 year ahead of him. And D. Moss Price, yeah. Moss Price was on the football team and the basketball team. Both of them were excellent basketball players. Brother Noel, when he played first string, he played it because he hustled. He hustled from the time he got on that court, but he did that in every sport that he played. He hustled in practice. He hustled in the game. He loved the sport, but I wished he loved the books as much as he loved the sport. He's like me. But by playing, well, I'll move on. He attended VMI, played 3 years of baseball at VMI. I'll say that Noel had one thing about him. He always played by the rules. I never saw him shortcut any rule or anything that was not right. And if you play by the rules, whether you win or lose, you'll always win. And that's the way that he loved the sport, and that's the way he played the game. He went in, after he finished VMI, of course, and he will tell you a little bit about that, he went in, he was commissioned officer in the Air Force. He spent, I believe it's 24 years, 24 years in the Air Force. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. And I've got just a few, his medals are in the Hall of Valor at VMI. He has Distinguished Flying Cross, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 9 Air Medals, Air Force Commendation Medal, Combat Readiness Medal, Presidential Citation, Vietnam Service Medal, and other awards too that he received, but all of them are in the Hall of Valor at VMI. And I tell you, I'm proud of my brother. I love my brother. And, you know, I'm kind of emotional when it comes to my brother, but that's where a Pinkett is. Either we're mad or we're crying, one of the two. There's nothing in between. But I want to introduce you to my brother, Lieutenant Colonel, retired Noel Price Pinkett.
Well, after that introduction, thank you, Ben. I want to thank the committee that approved my nomination. I want to thank Alvin for nominating me. And I'm here because of the achievements that I had in high school when I was here, and I guess because of the things that I did in my career afterwards. I graduated in '58, which has been 61 years, which is a considerable period of time. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So Alvin, again, I got to thank him. Alvin, as you've heard many times here, he is a legend in sports here in Franklin County. And so I really appreciate his nomination. Ben and I were walking around town a few months ago, and Alvin stopped to talk to us, and he says, "I'm going to nominate you for the Hall of Fame." And I said, I didn't even know what that was. And I was surprised, because this is the only second year. And down in New Bern, North Carolina, we don't get a lot of Franklin County news. So he told us he was going to nominate me for the Hall of Fame along with Abe Knapp and a couple other guys, D. Moss. So he told me to get a package together and send it to him about what I'd done in baseball here at Franklin County and what I'd done afterwards. So I put something together and sent it to him, and this is the result of what I sent Alvin. Alvin and D. Moss and I played a lot of sports here at Franklin County. Beginning in the 8th grade, we all played football, baseball, and basketball every year that we're here. And Alvin was 1 year ahead of me, and D. Moss was 1 year behind me. And one thing I want to emphasize is when you play a team sport, one of the major considerations is that you are part of a team, and each individual on that team is expected to carry their own weight. And that is, it's got to be a team effort. And another thing is that good sportsmanship. And sportsmanship has to do with being fair and courteous to your opponent, the team you're playing. And that is, win or lose, you must be fair and courteous to the team. In games that you play, there are instances that you remember. We've heard so many instances this morning about plays and games that guys are here. These guys are outstanding coaches and individuals that have made a career in sports. And my career is a little bit different. I went into a different, kind of a different direction. But in the games that you play, there are different games you remember, and there's something special about them. In my senior year here at Franklin County, our football team, we won 7 of the 10 games that we played. And in those 7 games that we won, the other team did not score a single point. So that was a great defensive team that we had during that time. And a lot of the players played both offense and defense at that time. And one game I specifically recall was a game that we played at Christiansburg that year. And Christiansburg had a back that was one of the fastest guys in the state of Virginia. His name was Joe Board. And Coach Henderson designed a defense that we hoped to be able to contain Board to keep him from breaking loose and scoring a touchdown. Well, it was a great game. All through the game, we were up and down the field. Each team made significant gains and so forth. Harold Boynton had broke loose one time for about 65 yards. They caught him. Nobody could score. And finally, we had a punt that rolled dead within the 2-yard line of Christiansburg. And we were able to catch Joe Board in the end zone for safety. And that proved to be the margin of victory in that game. It was a hard-fought, great game, hard tackling, that type of game. But one of the things I remember in that game is that once Board broke loose over on the side, and I was running the hardest I could to try to catch that guy, and I knew I wasn't going to catch him. And all of a sudden, a guy on our team came past me and cut him off and caught him and tackled him. And that kid was Billy Handy. He had run that guy down and caught him and had saved the ball game in that game. So that was a tremendous effort on Billy's part. In baseball, there's a couple of games that I recall that are significant to me. One game is I pitched a no-hit game down at Bedford, and I hit a home run over the center field fence. But the important thing to remember about that game is that there were 9 guys out there on that field. And this is the baseball that Coach Richards had the team sign. And you can see it's had some pretty rough treatments over the last 61 years, but you can still see some scribbling here of the guys' names on the ball. And Demos Price is one of the guys on the team. Another game that I recall is that we played down at Bassett, and we lost that game 1-0. But it was a tremendous game, and the thing, I knew a lot of these guys on the Bassett team because in the summer, I was asked to come down and play American Legion ball, and I pitched American Legion ball down at Bassett in the summer. But on the team, a guy named Buck Gale pitched for Bassett, and the catcher was a guy named Randy Hundley. And some of you guys probably know Randy or have heard of him. He signed a significant bonus when he graduated from Bassett. He played, signed with the Giants. He played for several years with the Giants. And then he went to the Chicago Cubs, where he was catcher. And then he coached at the Cubs for several years.
Who pitched, who called? Who pitched, who called?
Who pitched and who caught? I pitched and Randy caught. I mean, yeah. And now I move on to basketball. Basketball wasn't my forte, so to speak. I love to play it because of the competition and that type thing. But the thing I remember about basketball, Demos was one of our best players on the team. Alvin played. He was a great player also. But everybody on that team hustled and played as hard as we could. And that's the way Coach Richards, I mean, he insisted. When you stepped across that line to go out on that court or to go out on that baseball or football field, you had better be out there to give 100%. And so that's what we all did. So after Franklin County, I went to VMI, where I played baseball on the baseball team down there for 3 years. After I left VMI, I went into the Air Force, and it was an honor for me to be in the Air Force and to serve my country. In the military, I felt part of a big team dedicated to preserving freedom in our country. And we all worked together, and we all had a part to play. I had a long list of assignments in the Air Force, and each had a unique story about it, and it depended upon the duties and responsibilities of each job that I had while I was in the Air Force. And the thing, I met a lot of really outstanding people in the Air Force, my commanding officers, the guys that I worked with all through my career. And we were all part of a big team trying to keep our country free. One of my first operational assignment was as a combat crew member on the B-52 bomber. The B-52 bomber had a team or a crew of 6. They had the pilot, the co-pilot, a navigator, a radar navigator, an electronic warfare officer, and a tail gunner. Back in the 50s and 60s, the Air Force had built 744 B-52 aircraft. And the Strategic Air Command had aircraft on airborne and ground alert constantly during that period of time. In the airborne alert, some of the missions were 24 hours long. We would go up and be orbiting at various locations throughout the world. The different bases had different assigned orbit points, and they would go up and orbit in those locations, and when one aircraft would leave the orbit, there would be another one in to take its place. In our ground alert, we were in a bunker at the end of the runway. Usually we pulled 7 days on alert, and then we were ready at a moment's notice to go out to the airplane and start up and go to our assigned targets. I was always amazed every time I walked out to that huge aircraft with those 8 engines under the wings and step into that airplane that was loaded with nuclear weapons and get ready to go and perform our mission. And our usual load during that time was we carried, our particular squadron carried 4 nuclear weapons in the bomb bay with 1.1 megatons each. My next assignment, flying assignment, was in the B-66 destroyer aircraft. And in that aircraft, our mission was to provide electronic warfare support for the crews going into North Vietnam. We had a team or a crew of 6 on that airplane also. We had the pilot and the navigator and 4 electronic warfare officers in the bomb bay that would jam radar control guns and AAA and try to provide protections for the F-105 aircraft that were the strike aircraft going in to North Vietnam. The F-105 guys would fly around bombing this missile and radar control gun sites, and also assigned targets that they had in North Vietnam at that day. And I had a tremendous admiration for these F-105 pilots. They were courageous, most fantastic guys. They were flying down low level in that country in the most heavily defended area in the world. A couple of incidents that I recall from being in the B-66 was, the first one is that one day we had a mission up in North Vietnam, and we stayed on station a little longer than usual because there were still F-4s and 105s down in the target area. So when we left to go back to the base, when we got back to the base, we were a little bit low on fuel. And when we landed, the first thing I heard the pilot say is that, "Tower, do I have a chute?" And the tower says, "Negative chute." Well, back then, the B-66 and a lot of the F-4s also, they had a drogue chute that when you landed, it helped slow the aircraft down on the runway. Well, shortly after the tower said negative chute, I heard the pilot say negative brakes also. Well, I knew we were in trouble. Well, and suddenly that aircraft decides to take about a 60-degree turn off of the runway. And as we leave the runway, it rips the landing gear completely off the airplane, and we go sliding and bouncing out into the jungle, and we finally come to a stop, and I jump out over the side of the aircraft and run for a distance to get away from the plane. And shortly after, the 4 electronic warfare officers follow me out of the airplane. We all get out of the airplane without a scratch, hardly. There's one other incident that I will talk about a little bit later, has to do with the B-66. My next assignment was flying in the RF-4C reconnaissance aircraft. And I was stationed in RAF Alconbury, England, and in Ramstein Air Base, Germany, for over 6 years in that airplane. And I I served as a weapons systems officer in that F-4 for almost 10 years. It was a tremendous airplane. I really enjoyed flying that airplane and the mission that we had. The airplane was capable of Mach 2.2, or about 1,475 miles an hour. It had two J79 General Electric engines in it that produced about 17,500 pounds of thrust each. So it was a great airplane to fly. And next I want to just talk a little bit about an incident that happened in the B-66 just as I was getting ready to leave Takli Air Base over in Thailand to return to the States. On the 3rd of February, 1967, the scheduling officer came to me and said, "Noel, you don't fly one more mission before you go back to the States." And at the time, I had flown 92 combat missions up into North Vietnam, providing electronic warfare support for the 105s, mainly the 105s. The 105s lost about 330 aircraft during that period of time in North Vietnam. So when I'm there getting ready to ship my household goods back to the state, the scheduling officer comes to me on the 3rd of February and asks me if I want to fly one more mission. And I said, "No, Jack, I've got to ship my household goods tomorrow morning. They've scheduled me to turn them in at 10 o'clock, and so I won't be able to fly." So that's what I did. And when I came back to my hooch, and I laid down on my bare mattress, and the hooch, somebody wants to know what a hooch is. That's where we had, it was kind of a barracks area, and it was just open barracks. That's how we slept over there in Takli. But anyway, I'm back to the room, and I'm laying there, and all of a sudden a guy comes running in. He says, "Noel, the guys got shot down up there this morning, and they want you to go and pack up one of the guys' things and send it home." So that's what I did. And I sat down. When I got back, I sat down and I wrote this letter to Harriet. And she doesn't know I have this letter, but anyway, I'm going to read it. Part of it, not all of it. But anyways, "My dearest Harriet, you have probably heard about the B-66 that went down. I'm all right, and I'll probably be home a day or so after you get this letter. I can't tell you who the crew was because their names have not been released to the public. I had to go pack one of the guys' things and send them home. That was a sad job. It really makes you feel weird." Well, just what happened to the rest of those guys on that crew, I had no idea what happened to the guys on the crew until years later. When they released the names of the POWs that they were going to release, from Hanoi, 3 of the guys on the list were the pilot, the navigator, and one of the electronic warfare officers. So that we knew what happened to them. Several years later after that, the remains of 2 of the other guys were shipped back to the States, and they were identified as 2 other of the electronic warfare officers. And the last guy is still listed as missing in action. We do not know about his whatever happened to him. And what I want to just emphasize here is that freedom does not come free. And with that, I'd just like to take a minute to introduce my family. that have come this morning. And first is my wife, Harriet. She is she's a retired high school guidance counselor. She's a graduate of Bridgewater, where Flora went over there, but a few years ahead of him. Next, what?
A graduate of Franklin County High School.
I started going with Harriet at Franklin County High School when we were juniors in high school. And we've been married 57 years now. I hope a few more. Next, I wanted to introduce my son, Brian. Brian is a retired Marine pilot. He flew about 10 aircraft in the Marine Corps, and he was an instructor pilot in 4 of those aircraft, teaching other Marines to fly. And his primary aircraft was the AV-8 Harrier. Next, I want to introduce my granddaughter, Kinley. Kinley is a runner. She runs in these little races down. She does mini Ironman, which she swims, bikes, and rides in these little contests. And she also runs 5K races and so forth down there. And next is my grandson, Kyle. He is a soccer player, and I love the way he plays soccer, and he hustles out on that field, and I enjoy watching him play. And he's also a basketball player. He loves basketball, and he's got a tremendous one-hand push shot that when I'm playing horse with him, I know I'd better be able to make about 3 or 4 of those in a row, or I'm going to be a horse. But he loves basketball, and his favorite team is the Golden State Warriors. And talking about Ironman contests, their mother does the actual Ironman contest. She has done several of those things. And let me tell you, when you go to and see one of those things, and you have about 1,000 people jump into a lake or a river and start swimming at the same time, man, it's heads over heels, everything else of guys swimming in that water. But they swim 2.5 miles. They get off and ride a bicycle for 112 miles, and then stop and run 26 miles marathon. When you do that all in one day, that's a tremendous accomplishment, and Kelly has done that 3 or 4 times. What? You can hear it? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, next I want to introduce my daughter. She is a graduate of JMU, has a master's from National University. She's a part-time teacher up in Northern Virginia. Her husband, Philip, is still an active duty Marine. He currently teaches at the National War College up in Washington, D.C. He's a past commander of a Marine Light Attack Helicopter Squadron, and also past commander of the 49th Marine Air Group, which is a very large organization. Philip had 2 tours in Iraq flying the helicopter gunship. Next to him is my granddaughter, Megan, and she's an athlete also. She's on the softball team at South County High School up in Northern Virginia, and their team won the state championship last year, and she's also on the field hockey team. And then Connor plays soccer, and he plays on one of these travel teams up in Northern Virginia, and they play a very high caliber soccer. It's tremendous to watch those guys out there on the field playing soccer. And I was introduced to this game of soccer when we were in England, and they would televise this game on Saturday afternoons and so forth. And I looked at that game and I said, this game will never catch on in the States. I said, we play real football in the States. Well, I was a little bit wrong, because when you go to see these soccer games now, there are hundreds of kids out there playing soccer every day. And finally, I have one granddaughter that's not here, Caitlin. She was on the rowing crew at her high school, and now she's a student at Virginia Tech. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. I want to thank the committee for approving my nomination. I want to thank Alvin, the tremendous guy, for nominating me in the first place. I told him he got me into this fix, so I'm glad Glad he did. And the guys that have been here this morning, I have really been inspired by their stories and what they've done and accomplished in their careers. They're all great guys. Thank you.
Congratulations. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Whoops. Lost your pen. Lost your pen.
Introducing our last 2019 Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Carlton DeMoss Price Jr., who will be introduced by Dr. Norm Walton.
As you're going to detect very quickly, my accent is much different than everyone else's. As all the introducers have said, I'm also honored, and especially to present DeMoss Price to you. We all know him as CD. And it's interesting that somebody that grew up in Burnt Chimney is being introduced by somebody from upstate New York that grew up in Painted Post. They had a totem pole in town, so we both know what it's like growing up in a small community. And I understand that Burnt Chimney, his family basically comprised Burnt Chimney. There are very few other people. And I think the Lieutenant Colonel is going to be surprised when he hears some of the comments that I'm going to make about DeMoss. And as we look at the comments that were made by Ms. Worley initially, that these people so worthy that have been the new inductees is because of achievements and accomplishments. And that's what they've done. And with DeMoss or CD, it's exactly the same way. I'm not going to dwell at all upon his athletic career. People know about that. I wasn't personally involved at all. Our lives intermeshed in the 1990s. And that's when we, over 20 years ago, became friends and also very much involved in certain activities. As already has been mentioned, sports provides a foundation for so many of us and so many of the people, especially here, for all the characters, our personality, and activities that we later get involved in. As noted by Ms. Worley, these accomplishments are not just in athletics, but it's also in the private lives. And that's what I'm going to dwell with DeMoss. After he graduated in '59 from Franklin County High School, he went to what I knew as, even as up north, Virginia Polytech Institute. And we all knew about it because in upstate New York, Corning, New York, had Corning Glass Works with all sorts of engineers, and they wanted their engineers from VPI. It was one of the best places of training for the engineers. He was also in the military, and he served in the military. After he left the military, he took his first job in the insurance business, worked his way up, as these other lady and gentlemen have done in their career, and became president and CEO of the largest insurance agency in the state of Tennessee. After that, he left, and he was involved in a new program that a contract had been won over at Y12 in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in a program that was initiated through the federal government known as the Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program Act. A lot of letters, But what it did, it identified nuclear workers who were supporting the military in all that they did, and we know the military can't operate unless you have all the support of all the workers making the bombs, doing the job, and providing for them. The government recognized these people became ill. They developed illnesses unbeknownst to them because of exposure to radiation, chemicals, and toxins as part of their work. A program then was established to help these people, but it took a very unique individual to bring all this together, because the federal program had to be applied throughout the whole United States. And we've already heard about people that played by the rules. Well, you've got to know the rules, you have to know the regulations, because every state is different. CD or DeMoss knew the rules. And he knew the rules in the industry of insurance. And he also knew about self-insurance. He was able to take this program on paper and bring it to life. Otherwise, it was strictly a paper program that's sounding great with no teeth, and was able to, with his expertise, apply it initially in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, but later spread throughout the United States. It has helped over 40,000 employees. I get choked up. He knew the importance of honoring people that support us. Support the lieutenant colonel and all of us. You here can be very proud. He's one of you. The Moss.
Thank you. Wow. With the illness that occurred in Oak Ridge with those people, most of them are retirees, and as a result of that, they are very sick. A lot of them are terminal, so we do get emotional when we talk about them. We've done a lot for them. The government's done a lot for them, and we're proud of that. We're proud that the government recognized the fact that they were Cold War veterans. They never served in the military, but they were supporters of the military, in particular the nuclear weapons division of that part of the military. But I had a speech all made, but I'm not going to have that speech today because I'm inspired by these people. And as each one of them spoke and brought up different things in their lives, I'm going to translate that into what my family knows me, and my family's here today, thank God for y'all. I have little CD-isms or DeMoss-isms that I have about life. Short one-liners that I say about things in life. The first one I'm going to use is John and Ann, and it is, and I tell this to the girls when they got married, in order to be loved, you must be lovable. Obviously, with y'all working at different places in your family, you are very lovable people. And I think that's one of the things that I have preached to my girls, to always remember that. To be loved, you must be lovable. The second thing that inspires me is one of my favorite, Andre, and I do this as a hobby. and I get really excited about it. Oh, and by the way, I'm having a meet and greet from 4:30 to 6 today, and if y'all want to hear more of these, be sure to come, because I've got a lot of them. It's very interesting that you brought up about the baseball. Me being a baseball lover, my favorite sport. 108 stitches. It just so happens in combat, before you go to combat, you silently hear the national anthem. It has approximately 108 seconds. So I think that's a great correlation. So we always pause for 108 seconds before we seek the mission. So, and then Noel, you got the ball. You got the ball. And in your case, you know, it's very humbling to serve in the military. About 4% of the citizens of the United States serve in the military. And that's a very small percentage. During the Kent State and during that period of Vietnam, it was very unpopular to serve in the military. As a matter of fact, when I got out of the military and came home, I was asked, it's about a 2-day exit interview. And I was asked it would be best if I would not wear my uniform. That hurts to this day. It really does, and I still get broke up about it because I had spent so much time. I'd gone to a military school at Virginia Tech, and I had gone in the military, and now I'm getting out, and they tell me not to wear my uniform home. It's best not to wear my uniform home. So, to you, freedom is a word. To serve and be active in that freedom is a patriot. I just wanted you to know that. Marshall, I guess to you it's harder. It's not a bad thing to be short. Nobody recognizes you. Nobody recognizes you in a crowd. Nobody recognizes you. So you could get by with murder, almost. So I guess to you is another one of my favorite, and that is, only in the dictionary does success come before work. Only in the dictionary. Obviously, you have lived that. A tribute to you. You like that? Gary, I'm going to wait on you. I'm not going with you right now. But anyway, and Abe, choice. How significant is having the right choice at the right time? And you did one of the best things that I've ever seen. You got Mr. Franklin County to introduce you. That is absolutely fabulous. Alvin Hall has absolutely been tremendous to this county and to himself and to his family. What a tribute. Thank you, Alvin. And I'll tell you a story about Alvin. We'd go to practice, and Steve would give us 2 balls. He'd give one to Alvin and one to me. And nobody else got those balls during practice. He kept one and I kept one, and we shot them all. So that's what we did.
Never make a shot you don't take.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that they've got me last. Isn't that wonderful? That is so wonderful, because all of these great athletes and great people realize it's important to take the last free throw. It's even more important to get the last strikeout or the last strike. I always wanted to bat 3rd or 4th. I could do more damage at 3rd or 4th. And best of all, make that last putt. So I get an opportunity to make the last putt. Isn't that nice? For my family, for my 10 grandchildren, 2 wives, and 4 daughters who are here today, I'll not try to name them each one, even though I can, and also give their birth dates. And my wife will tell you, if you ever want my opinion, don't ask for it, because I will give it to you in no short terms. But in order to make this a little bit shorter, and I cheated, I went to the bathroom a while ago, so I'm sorry. I'm back to you, Gary. You obviously read a great book that absolutely changed you tremendously. And before that, you were, as I gathered from your comments, not a great either believer in prayer or faith or not to the degree that you was after you read the book. So you became that. I pray every day. Every day. And I'll tell you, with 2 wives, 4 daughters, 4 son-in-laws, 10 grandchildren, and working at a nuclear weapons facility, I pray a lot. And that's my message to everyone. Remember, it's short and sweet. And the other thing is, I want to pay tribute to 5 people that's no longer with us that were really instrumental in my life. Obviously, my mother and father. And I'll get a little emotional here. My beautiful sister, Mary Elizabeth. Everybody knew her as sister. Her family's here today. She was thoroughly convinced that the hospital couldn't run without her, and the family couldn't run without her, and everything that she did. Carl Price, who Carl was a halfback here under Cy Dillon, scored 4 touchdowns in 1 game, and Carl was extremely successful in his football career. He was he was 5 years older than I, and he worked together on the farm. I'm a farm boy from Burnt Chimney, going to Virginia Tech, going overseas, coming back from the military, winding up at Oak Ridge. Who would have ever guessed that? Who would have ever thought that? But Carl had an opportunity to go to Duke. Duke wanted him on a scholarship, but in those days, you took shop classes. We called them shop classes. And you didn't take what was called advanced academic, or what we call college courses. Now they call them college courses. We call them hard courses, because they didn't deal with trigonometry, physics, and other things. So Carl advised me. He said, DeMoss, he said, you need to take all those hard courses, because you have an opportunity to go to college, and you're one of the few in the family that has at this time. So I took all the hard courses. Thank God for Miss Naomi Perlman. She loved me and she did not like a lot of people, and was a very tough teacher. But for some reason, she took a liking to me, which I was thankful for. But Carl advised me to take those courses, which I did. And in doing so, I needed help. And a cousin of mine, at that time, her name was Rachel Newell. She's now Rachel Youngman. She was my tutor. She always made sure I had my homework done. And she taught me how to study and how to dance. I didn't know how to dance. I must mention that. So with those people, and I can't forget Johnny. Johnny is more this school. Now, I'll get boastful now. He's more than the bricks and mortar here. He was here so long, loved this place. And I will tell you that. He is absolutely a brother by another mother. And Gail and I have had many conversations about him. I left here at age 19. I told you I was getting emotional about Johnny. And he and I were never separated from the time we were born until I went off to college. And then we seldom saw each other, which is sad. So to Johnny and sister and mom and dad and Carl, I know where you are. I know y'all are happy. Thank you. I do not want to end on that note. So it's time for me to shoot another foul shot for you guys. Did I ever get back to you, Gary? Huh? I want to get back to you, because I think what you said is so important. And I'm glad you read the book. To my lovely family and all, I want the name of that book.
Leap for God's sake.
Leap for God's sake. You got it?
That's the best $12 you'll ever spend.
That is super. That is super. I was inspired by what you said and how you changed. Yeah. And I did watch you on TV. But thank y'all. Remember, there is a meet and greet from 4:30 to 6:30 this afternoon in the cafeteria. What?
Ramsey Cafeteria.
Ramsey Cafeteria. Thank you. Oh, I forgot you.
Oh. Think of something really
To Crystal Mosley, who made a great decision by going to the University of Virginia, even though I may not agree with her on that. She is going to be invited to Tennessee to witness where Pat Head Summit walked, sit, and played and coached. She has a special invitation to that. She is a great believer in Pat and loves Pat, and I think that's a gift that I can give to you. And Dr. Walton and I will make certain that that's done.
Thank
You're welcome. Thank y'all for coming, and I appreciate it. Don't forget to greet and meet. And Gary, very inspirational in that book. Thank you.
Oh, is that right?
She'll let her know. Okay.
Go through the doors and it should be
Okay. I'm sure. I don't want a group picture. Yeah. That's a good word.
I wonder, this thing got a urinal right here.